We're live right now. Hey, everybody out there on Facebook. This is Chris Bedford here with the Daily Caller News Foundation. We're here with Katie Frates and Christian Datoc, and we're joined by a special guest, Dr. Lonnie Johnson. Now, if you haven't heard the name yet, you've absolutely played with the toys, or at least bought them for your children to do untold amounts of damage to your property. The inventor of the Super Soaker, which has, I think, been in the top 20 best-selling toys since it was released on the market.
Forever.
You know,
yeah.
Longer than I've been alive. That action, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And also a serious developer of the Nerf gun. And when he's not spending time on his full-time job, he has time for his hobbies, which included working on the stealth bomber, the Galileo project, the Cassius probe? Cassini probe. See, I'm obviously a reporter,
not
a
NASA.
Scientist.
Yeah.
Not a scientist. And so he still keeps time, for space exploration and some of the stuff, for the children. But generally, he's, I think, most famous for this. So thank you for joining us.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
So what brings you down to Washington, D.C., up to Washington, D.C. from Atlanta?
Well, I was invited to receive an award.
Well deserved.
Well, an Inventor Award. I guess this is in celebration of Black History Month.
That's fantastic.
And so this is something, obviously, I'm flattered to be honored.
Where's the dinner? Is it one of the fancy spots?
I'm not sure. I think it's over the Rayburn building.
They can't let that information out to the public.
Yeah, they can't let that out to the public. Well, I would say usually these dinners, like you get some good food, but then you have to deal with the speaker. But it probably goes by more quickly if you're the speaker.
Well, I hope not to be the speaker. But
you might get surprised.
So, Doctor, I want to know, tell me about that time that you almost burned down your house when you were a kid. Because that cracks me up.
She's been talking about this for 2 days.
It's hysterical. I really want to know the story behind that, and I believe it might have involved trying to make some
Causing
jet fuel.
trouble for parents since you were a child.
Yes, so not to mention the Barbie dolls, those poor dolls. Tell us what happened with that.
Okay. Well, when I was younger, I gotten interested in the space program at a very young age. In fact, it was around 62, I think it was, that President Kennedy said we would put a man on the moon before the decade was out. A very challenging proposition because we didn't have the technology to do it at the time. And in fact, he acknowledged that we don't have the materials, we don't have the know-how, it's never been done before, but we're going to do it before the decade's out. So it was a challenge for the entire nation.
So you got right.
Immediately. Skip school and work on the project.
There were some times when I skipped school to work on some projects. I will admit that.
We've all been there.
Me too.
To work on projects. Right, yeah.
That was a robot. But anyway, so I was interested in rockets and was interested in how they worked. I wanted to be on my own. I first started out by buying these little model rockets from a company called Estes. They're still in business. In fact, they make model rockets. You can actually buy them. But then I wanted to go to the next level. I wanted to be able to mix my own rocket fuel, build my own rocket, and the whole nine
As
yards.
one does as a child.
To attack the neighbor's kids, right?
The neighbor's cat, I bet.
So I went to the library to look up rockets and rocket fuels and try to figure out how to do it. And so I found this one book that really explained how to design the rocket and even gave a formulation for the fuel.
It's so dangerous that they have that in a children's library. But I'm so happy. If we were smarter, we would have figured that out growing up.
Well, they did eventually, I think. But yeah.
So, but the ingredients, as a kid, grade school kid, I didn't recognize a lot of the ingredients. And so I built the rocket and everything, but I didn't have fuel for it. So it sat in my mother's kitchen for a long time. It looked great.
Was she really thrilled to have this rocket?
Well, I mean, she was okay with it. It was just sitting there. It was basically a metal tube with a nose cone and fins and so forth. It looked kind of cute.
It at least wasn't causing trouble.
Right. It was just, and it was unfueled.
Yeah.
So, actually, one day my mother sent me to the pharmacist to pick up a prescription, and so while I was there and waiting on the pharmacist to fill the prescription, I was just walking down the aisles and reading the various labels on the items on the shelf, just out of curiosity, not expecting to see this one ingredient that I didn't know about, and it was there.
Oh no! And a lifetime of crime.
Let's get a couple bottles of this.
And so, yeah, I purchased some and took it home and finished the composition of the fuel. And the first time it was just mixing the powders together, and it burned. It was really exciting and nice. And then, okay, I'm ready to put it in the rocket engine now, but the instructions called for heating it, turning, and it would melt one of the ingredients down. It would form a serpent-like structure, a composite. And you pour this into the body of the rocket, and then as it cooled, it would solidify, so it would become a solid propellant inside the rocket. And so I was stirring this fuel in the kitchen on the stove because I had to have a heat source to melt it. And everything was going great. It was melting down very nicely. And then it was just one little corner on the edge of the pan. I saw this little small spark.
Uh-oh.
And I knew that there was no way for me to stop it. Just continued to spread.
Oh, man.
Oh, no.
And the flames started shooting up out of the pot, you know, and the smoke was so thick you couldn't see your hands in front of your face. It was just that close. It was really, really bad. Sparks were flying all over the place. And of course it was very scary. I backed away. The only thing I could do was just back away from it. And then when the smoke finally cleared, there were a few small holes in the kitchen chairs, but the kitchen didn't catch fire.
That's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
That is good. And when my dad came home, he looked at me and said, "You're going to have to mix that outside from now on."
Seems like a fair rule.
Yeah, he bought me a hot plate
Oh, great. Oh,
so
perfect.
I could continue my habit.
That must be a good dad to be in between. Like, I wanna give you a weapon, but you seem smart, and I don't want to discourage
Let's foster
you.
this.
How do I do this without turning you into a supervillain?
Now, how old were you when that experiment took place?
Oh, I would say about 14.
Okay.
13 or 14, somewhere in there.
That makes me feel better about what I was doing at 13, 14. I thought this might have been like 7 or 8 years old, you know,
No,
prodigy.
I was a little bit older than
kicking
that.
over anthills and just digging.
At
that age.
somebody told us if you mix gasoline with styrofoam, you can make napalm. I don't know if that was really
Allegedly.
napalm.
I
But I
did
got
that
my
when I was
first
a kid,
hand
too.
scars. Because it gets on you and
Doesn't
like
it?
doesn't
Well.
stop burning.
But you guys are dangerous.
Oh, that was
So
stupid.
really,
We
the
did it in
moral
the
of the
woods so
story
we
is
wouldn't
that
start a
we're all
fire.
pyros at heart when we're children.
And we did it in the woods so
part
as
of
not
the
to start a
Yeah.
fire, which is extra stupid.
Yeah.
Because the woods is where the fire really hurts.
The last place you want to be in a fire is in the middle of a wooded area.
So, and your second
I see
project
this
was, and one you won in the award at the science fair, was creating a robot based kind of, at least I read, kind of based on the Lost in Space robot. And one of your later projects then is this robot probe that you've sent to Saturn to take a look at the rings.
Well, I can't say that I sent it.
But you helped.
I helped. I was on. I was on the team that, on the design team, on the systems engineering team, and that was the core team that pulled all of the various systems on the spacecraft together and made sure that. Well, let me back up a second. The way those large systems are developed, literally, these are one-of-a-kind spacecraft. So you have a mission, you have certain science that you want to accomplish, and so you identify scientists from some of the top research institutions around the country. And they make a case for their instrument being on the spacecraft. So their instrument, they get someone to help them work with them to design the instrument. And then you have the spacecraft itself, which includes the attitude control system, the propulsion system, combustors, and all the rocket engines.
The rocket fuel.
For the less smart people in the room.
The central computer, the attitude control, the radio, the communication systems, power distribution and control. You have all of these things that make the spacecraft a spacecraft. Of course, the structure there and the power source. And my job on the Galileo project in particular was the power source. So I was responsible for integrating the power system onto the spacecraft. And this was a nuclear power source. It's called radioisotopic thermoelectric generators.
Naturally.
Naturally.
Of course.
And it used plutonium-238 as a heat source.
Wow. Bricks.
Wow.
Bricks.
You're nervous.
In 2017, I was off my game.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't think I missed a single one in 2016.
I don't think you've recovered since that dark day.
I was
Weeks
listening.
ago.
I was listening. You were
Okay.
listening. Everyone ignore Christian.
Like always. That's all that happens. I just get ignored.
Where was I?
On the nuclear propulsion system.
So
Naturally.
my job on that spacecraft was to make sure that for the various phases of the mission, I'd run analysis to make sure that we could power all the systems that needed to be on. For example, when the upper stage was released from the shuttle, then there was this upper stage burn that took the spacecraft out of Earth orbit.
That's
And
a
then
long
there
trip,
was-
too.
And it's a long trip. Yes. I recall it was several years. But in any case, various maneuvers on the way, but then when you start getting close to Jupiter, there was a maneuver where the spacecraft would release the probe, and then it would change its trajectory. So the probe would actually go into the planet and go into the atmosphere. The spacecraft would go into orbit around, so that it could relay data from the probe back to Earth. And we had a problem on the spacecraft where, because we used memory that had to have power all the time, the computer memories, if we ever lost power to the computer memories, they would come up empty and there would be no programming to give it.
That sounds like a problem when you're flying through space.
Yeah, you got to remember
Not
your
having
training.
any information.
You know, that's a good point, because when I went to JPL with the idea, I wanted to know how they did that, because it seemed like magic. You design a spacecraft and it literally is in transit for years going to an outer planet, and you hear about these failures and things going wrong, and then the scientists on the ground, the engineers, recover the spacecraft, solve the problem, and the mission goes forward. So I did learn how to do it. It was a lot of hard work.
I can imagine, yeah.
Thought
No
process
kidding.
and what ifing. And so we had this one problem with there was a short circuit, if some failure or instrument or something like that had an internal short and caused the power to go down, for example, like in your house if you trip a circuit breaker or something, power goes off. The spacecraft would automatically start shedding all of those loads. Everything would, anything non-critical would be turned off. And then it would start switching things back on to bring the spacecraft back up. If the load does not, or the short circuit or problem did not clear itself, it would be down long enough that the backup power source would drain. The backup capacitors actually is what was used.
And then you know the government money?
And we didn't have a solution to this, because the concern was that, well, if you have a failure that lasts longer than a certain period of time, then you could get the power back, but then there would be no program, and ET could not call home.
No. And you had a long startup. It was frustrating. There was no just restart you could select.
Right. Well, so I came up with this circuit that we call the memory keep alive power supply. So it would actually connect to the RTGs, radioisotopic thermoelectric generators. So when your circuit breakers start opening up, the relays isolate each. There were two RTGs that would be isolated from each other with these diodes, and so current could only go one way. So even if the short circuit was in the power source, they would be isolated from each other. One couldn't pull the other one down. So I said, well, those diodes, we could take a little power off of that, boost it up, and supply it directly to the memories. And there were people saying, oh, that voltage is too low, it won't work, you can't do it.
And you
We won't know until you try, right?
Right. Well, that was my point. I told the chief systems engineer, Ron Draper, I said, Ron, when I put this idea forward, these guys are going to say it won't work. And when they say that to you, let me know. Then I'll go home and build one in my garage and I'll bring it in.
Oh, I love that.
So I'm assuming that probably happened at some point.
Actually, it didn't happen, fortunately, because, you know, I would have had to deliver on that threat.
True.
So we, working with the engineers there at JPL, when the idea was presented, that was enough to really push the issue. We made it work. We got it on the spacecraft. And
people stopped doubting you.
Yeah, it was a major moral victory for that reason. In fact, I had one guy who actually came up to me afterwards and said, Lonnie, I want to apologize to you for the things that I've been saying about your idea.
Behind your back.
Yeah,
Wait, what were the things you were
All the
saying?
mean things.
I'm like,
which, by the way, now you know.
I'm saying, like, well, what did you say? He wouldn't tell me.
Don't worry about it.
Oh, man.
I'm sorry, though.
It's water under the bridge. I just apologized.
Yeah, I didn't say any things a lot of other people were saying, though. I'm just so you know.
You've had a couple fights. So when you just won a fight and a pretty big payout a few years ago from the guys, the Nerf guys, because they were not quite giving you enough of your royalties. At any point after you won, did you lean over to these toy executives and be like, you just tried to outsmart a rocket scientist?
Right?
What were you thinking? By like fudging a decibel, it's like, oh, math and numbers is actually my thing.
My forte.
Right.
Seeing as I travel through space.
Actually,
Yeah.
no, I didn't. In fact, I was feeling bad about the relationship having gone sour. So it was, I felt the whole thing was a lot.
I one time got all that money
You
out of
you had the patents for both Super Soakers and Nerf guns because they're your invention.
Now, what was it called? The Power Drencher?
The power,
Super Drencher? Or
the
was
power
it
drencher
Power
was
Drencher?
is what when Super Soakers first came out, it was called Adventure.
That's a very 80s name, and I love everything about it, to be honest.
And someone claimed that they owned that name and they had a copyright on it because they put Adventure
Can't
on
imagine
a
what the heck that
package to some other water gun. And so the second year, we changed the name to Super Soaker.
And it sucked.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge part of my
Alliteration is the key.
childhood. My
It's a
dad
good
bought
marketing
them for the kids, but
Well, I think
definitely
they're
so you
even
could
are
chase the
now.
dog.
I
Yeah, it was for him to chase the kids and dog.
Yeah.
And obviously, the Daily Caller buys a healthy supply of them for the office.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, we help keep that market strong.
I don't want to say we're single-handedly keeping,
So-
No,
Super
but
Soaker
we help.
business because
We help.
You help.
they've reached close to $1 billion in sales.
Our space reporter told me this beforehand, so if he's wrong, Andrew Fault, I'm coming for you. That the Cassini probe is going to commit suicide in one of the rings around September. In September.
I believe that is the case. I had not been following the spacecraft.
So that was my next question. I was wondering if you were going to feel sad. Like, what if you were to like sit there and look at the stars and have a scotch, knowing your robot just killed itself, and it's like
You
your
know,
creation.
But
Is it like the robot? What's the robot in that movie that saves the little kid and flies up into the sky and blows up?
But yeah, I do. Yeah, I had not thought about that for a while. In fact, when I did hear about that, the idea is to gather data that you otherwise would not get because you can actually go into the rings, and so it's science. I mean, the whole
you tell the
idea is
robot
science.
that, like, this is going to be rough, but you know, this is an
it's
important
going to be
mission.
harder for me than for you.
because I'm a human.
Be gone.
Well, what do you think is the future for space exploration? Do you think it's
wow.
machines or humans?
Private or public
Think of
sector.
like Mars. Of
private
course, there's a
public.
big
Wow.
push
That's-
with Mars right now as well. Like,
Well, there's a lot of interest in going to Mars. You hear all of the
I
things
don't wanna
that
go to
NASA's
Mars.
doing. Well, a lot of people
I know.
do
Crazy
so.
people. You can't come back.
I don't know if you call them crazy.
Do you want to go?
Adventurous.
You know, adventurous. That's the word. They're adventurous, and they're willing to take the risk and and go for it, which is cool. I'm glad we have people.
I'm so
Like that.
unadventurous.
Yeah, so we don't have to go. Exactly.
Right?
There's
I
other
was just
people
flying
I'll
over.
help design it.
Like
but
the
I
love,
don't
let me know
I
how
wanna
it
get
goes.
you there. I'm not going though.
I was flying over back from California a few weeks ago, looking out the window at all the desert for like hours and thinking, who the hell kept going? There's
Yeah.
no shot. I'd be like, I'm going back to Boston.
Well,
This is insane.
you know what's interesting to me? Now that you mentioned that, I was Bill Gates came out with this statement saying that we need a miracle, an energy miracle to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. We need to do within a few years what normally would take 100 years or more. And I thought about that, and I came up with this vision, and so I put this chart together that showed the Columbus's flagship, the Santa Maria, and I put the Saturn V rocket on the same, and it was a scale drawing. So the Santa Maria was this small ship. It was about 300 feet
I
long.
wouldn't take that across the Atlantic.
No, it wasn't 300.
That's-
It was 35 feet. It was about 30-something feet
small.
long, and the Saturn V rocket was about 300-something feet tall. But anyway, the ship, wooden sticks, traveling about 2.5 miles an hour. The Saturn V rocket traveled about 3,000 miles an hour. It took a few hundred years to get from that technology. And think about it, the ship was the best that mankind had to offer. This Queen of Spain gave them the ship to come across the ocean. And it took about 2.5 months, I think it was, to get across. And you could think, this was a time when people were still wondering if the world, or just coming to the conclusion that the world is round and not flat, right?
I
So-
would have had to have such a gambling debt to get on that ship.
I'm telling you, that's the whole point. You think
I gotta
now
go,
everybody
actually. I gotta leave.
everybody on that ship, no doubt, was. I mean, there was a lot of faith, but
Yeah.
I'm sure that everybody was not highly educated and
A couple
enlightened.
desperate men.
That's definitely
they're
true.
like, whatever over there is probably better than whatever's back there. So
Yeah. They owed some money. They had a bad girlfriend.
let's go.
It happens.
Some child support. I don't know.
You
They had
wake
to
up
go.
every morning and say, "Oh, it didn't fall off today."
Yeah. 1400 was a crazy time. A lot of different
Everyone
models.
said they were monsters.
Well, that's because
Yeah, I
that's
wouldn't
true.
believe. I
There
still
are
believe
monsters.
it. When I go in the
Believe
deep
what
water,
you're
I'm like,
talking
I'm not
about,
going in
yeah.
that water.
Yeah. Believe me.
But yeah, it's interesting what technology does, and that's what fascinates me.
So when I was a kid growing up, it was not a very technical model, but one of my first models I built was a stealth bomber. And you also built a stealth bomber, which makes us very similar.
A little bit larger than the model size.
Well, I can't say I built the stealth bomber. It was a team of engineers developing that aircraft, And that was an interesting experience as well. You know, there were people working on that airplane who had no idea what they were working on, because the military has this way of, when you classified or how it's classified projects, they'll compartmentalize it and give you a problem to solve, and you do this work, but you don't know what it goes.
You don't know it's
Until
going to be
the
the giant
end when they
black
reveal it,
V.
and you're like, oh, yeah,
Well,
all right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
I did that.
Or you may never know that what you did actually ended up there.
And then you tell your wife
and-
that you knew all along.
Actually-
Like, I just had to keep a secret.
Like, babe, look at what I did.
But you
Yeah.
actually-
I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because I was, you know, in the military, so I was the first engineer assigned by the Strategic Air Command to that project from the user side. Now, so my job was to come up with work on the flight test program, where we would exercise the plane, make sure that it's going to meet SAC's mission requirements and so forth. And so I was in a situation where I got to second guess the designers.
Probably a good feeling.
Kind of cool, yeah.
Were you at was that at Hanscom Air Force Base, or where was that?
That was at Edwards Air Force Base.
Edwards?
That's
Oh,
the
okay.
flight test center, so the plane was going to be delivered there. But you know, we go to Northrop and on forklifts going down the hall and things like that. And in the hall, you see people, but you couldn't talk about what that was, because there were a lot of people who didn't know what it was. It was interesting how that worked out. It was a fascinating airplane, though. Back then, you know, it was, you know, cutting edge technology. So we would actually go into the cockpit or in flight simulators, and they actually had, you know, the screens. You could pull up the screen, and you could literally pull up all the systems on the airplane. So if there was, and the airplane could land anywhere and refuel at your local gas station to take off.
Assuming you found a road wide enough, right?
That's awesome.
And so, I mean, there are a lot of scenarios. I don't know how much of that I can still talk about. But, yeah. But
Uh-oh.
We promise
You heard it
we
here
won't
first.
tell.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, not from us. That should be our next office purchase, I think. It's just a flight simulator.
That would be awesome.
No
I'm
one's,
not,
no
I'm
one's
not
with
getting
me
you a
on
flight
this.
simulator. You'll break it in a second.
No.
I'm an
Fallout would
expert.
break it.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the
We would
space.
take
He's the
care of
space
it.
reporter.
In my mind, I'm an ace pilot. So there's that. Yeah.
that's what counts.
It's all
right?
about visualization.
It's right.
Yeah?
It's what's in your mind is what
Self-confidence.
counts.
Yeah.
I think it was it Einstein who said that imagination was far, far more important than knowledge?
I honestly do not know, but that would not.
I
surprise me
imagine
if
that's
I like
true.
that quote.
And that's more important
And
than knowing.
then actually knowing. There you go.
Well, and you know what? What is even more important than that is getting the doctor to his award on time. So
Oh, wait, first, will you shoot a Nerf gun for us?
Oh, sure.
live
Shoot Phil.
demonstration from the theater.
Oh, Sean, where, buddy?
Oh, that was fun.
Fun, right?
Our reporters live in constant fear because of your technology.
I love
Write a
that.
bad story, you're getting shot.
Well, on that, we are out of beer and out of time, guys. Thank you so much for joining us again. That's Dr. Lonnie Johnson, the inventor of Super Soakers and Nerf guns. We will see you on Friday, so stay tuned.